Hey everybody, Ed Homewood. I hope everyone's doing well today. Welcome back to the channel. Well, this is one that's been requested by a lot of you guys. We're going to finally do the review of the FiiO WARMER R2R DAC. Yeah, do me a favor please, sit back, relax, and we'll get going on this video. Well, before we get started, quick note, if you're interested in purchasing the FiiO WARMER, there will be an APOS Audio affiliate link in the video description and in the pinned comment. APOS didn't send this to me, FiiO did, but if you're looking to purchase one, I recommend APOS Audio. So what is the FiiO WARMER? Well, it is a $350 fully balanced R2R resistor-ladder DAC with a tube buffer. I'll put some specs up here, but the high points for me are it is a fully differential 24-bit R2R resistor array, very similar, I think exactly the same one we've seen in the FiiO K13 and the FiiO K11. This is a very different kind of product for what would be traditionally known as the FiiO companies. It does use a tube buffer, as I mentioned, and it is 4 JJ-E88cc tubes. It does have a built-in linear power supply. You know, we're going to take a look at the front, we're going to take a look at the back, and I will open this up and we're going to dig around. Does nice on the specifications. It does 32-bit 384 and DSD 256 on USB, and on coax it's 24-192, and on optical it's 24-96. That's not uncommon on SPDIF. But again, I think it's just a way different product than we're normally used to from this type of company. So let's dig into it a little bit. Well, here we are looking at the front panel of the WARMER R2R, and it is really simple, and I love how clean it is. Power switch. Beautiful analog real meters rather than digital ones. And then your input selector. So you got USB, coax, or optical. Super clean, really nice, beautiful form factor, just a lovely piece. So now let's turn this thing around and look at the back. Well, here we are looking at the back of the WARMER DAC. And you guys may or may not know, originally FiiO sent me a 220 volt version. You'll see that here. And I had to wait for the 110 volt to actually do the review. So you can see there's the 110 volt back there. Anyway, IEC power socket, fuse holder, balanced outputs, single-ended output, coax in, optical in, USB in, your switch to go between NOS and OS modes. That's one of the things that keeps this thing so clean and just really very clean on the front. Also, you have a USB, change your mode from UAC 1.0 to UAC 2.0. I typically find UAC 2.0 to kind of be the universal one. Anyway, the switch is there depending on the game console you may connect this to. So anyway, that's a look at the back of the WARMER. Hey everybody, here we are looking at the inside of the FiiO WARMER DAC. Back panel, front panel, power input, power supply, nice toroidal power supply for this, or transformer. This is the power supply section, very robust, very well designed. And then of course our tubes. Now underneath this little plate, and I removed the screws a little earlier, there is the R2R ladder configuration. I'll insert a picture over here of what that, up here actually, what that ladder actually looks like. I'm not going to take it apart any further, but that's where kind of all the magic happens in addition to the tube magic. Now, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here so you can kind of see the tubes a bit better. They're held in place by these clips. So to get a tube out, you would just pull that clip off and release it that way, and then very, very gently work that tube out. And there you can see, that's the JJ-E88cc tube. And you'll see nice capacitors and so forth underneath. You'll see little red WEMA capacitors in there. This is a very well laid out unit. I think it's really, really fascinating. And again, for $350 to get a full ladder DAC with a tube buffer, that's amazing to me. Anyway, let's button this up and finish up this review. So let's call this section of the review Technical Reality Meets Tube-Infused Musicality. You know, at $350, the FiiO WARMER is absolutely one of the most intriguing DACs to hit this market, this segment of the market, kind of the sub $500 price range. It combines a true R2R resistor ladder DAC architecture with a genuine tube buffered output stage. That's a pairing that until recently was largely confined to way more expensive boutique brands and designs. The fact that FiiO has managed to execute this concept at this price point and with very good engineering, that's an impressive feat. Unlike a lot of other DACs from some other large Fun 5 manufacturers, this DAC is not designed to win any measurement shootouts, not even close. Instead, the Warmer is unapologetically voiced for musicality, tonal density, and long-term listenability, and you know how important that is to me. And you know what? It largely succeeds on all of those fronts. You know, at the heart of this unit is FiiO's custom fully differential 24-bit R2R ladder configuration. It's built from 192 high-precision, thin-film resistors that are very temperature stable. So unlike Delta Sigma DACs, which rely heavily on noise shaping, aggressive oversampling, you've heard me talk about that a lot, the architecture converts the digital signal in a much more linear, more time-coherent manner, at least in theory, often resulting in a much more analog-like presentation. Well, the Warmer's digital front end supports USB, optical, and coaxial inputs. You know, we're going to take a look at the front, the back, and we're going to go digging around inside. And it has a switch on the back so the user can select NOS mode, non-oversampling, or OS mode, oversampling mode. Now, in oversampling mode, it extends the support up to 384 kilohertz and up to DSD 256, while in NOS mode, it strips the process down to its essentials. It prioritizes time domain integrity over frequency domain perfection. Well, the analog stage is where the Warmer clearly declares its intentions. Output buffering is handled by 4 JJ-E88CC or 6922 type tubes, which introduce deliberate harmonic shaping, primarily second order, very common with tubes, and a gentle smoothing of leading edges. This is not a passive tube decoration. The tubes are audibly and measurably a part of the signal path. Well, the Warmer's power delivery comes from a 46-watt low-noise toroidal linear power supply. You'll see when we go inside. That's an important detail given the current demands of a resistor-ladder DAC, and tube stages both draw a lot of current. Noise floor performance is respectable rather than class-leading, but stable and consistent. Part of what we want is that tube distortion. And visibly, the Warmer leans into the retro charm with mechanical VU meters and warm LED backlighting. You know, it reinforces the whole idea that this is a character piece rather than a sterile lab instrument. You know, on the measurement front, it really doesn't matter with a product like this. Like most R2R designs, especially those with tube output stages, the Warmer does not post headline, grabbing measurements. With a THD of about 0.05%, it sits well behind modern Delta Sigma DACs, not sonically, and even some newer solid-state R2R competitors. Remember, we as human beings are typically not that sensitive to total harmonic distortion because it's harmonic. It's in harmony with the rest of the frequencies. Typically, most speakers are much greater than 1% or 2% THD. So really what the electronics THD is really not that important, and it really doesn't add anything to your listening enjoyment. You know, the specifications for the Warmer are entirely consistent with its design goals. The distortion profile is dominated by low-order harmonics, which many listeners perceive as being euphonic rather than intrusive. This is a DAC voiced by ear as much as by a measurement machine, and its measurements reflect that philosophy. Well, so my subjective listening impressions about the Warmer. You know, for the first few tracks, this unit presents as smooth, lush, and harmonically rich with an immediate sense of tonal saturation through the mid-range. Voices and acoustic instruments have body and density, carrying a slightly, maybe golden hue that feels intentional rather than clumsy. When switching the Warmer between NOS modes, non-oversampling, and OS modes, oversampling mode, it reveals a subtle but meaningful difference. In non-oversampling mode, the presentation is at its most relaxed, smooth, lush, and with an even greater emphasis on flow and tonal density. Transients are further kind of rounded. The sound leans fully into that analog-like ease that prioritizes cohesion over precision. In oversampling mode, the Warmer gains a touch more clarity and apparent detail, with upper frequencies exhibiting slightly more energy and openness. You know, there's a modest increase in perceived air and transient definition, although the overall voicing remains unmistakably on the smooth side. Even in OS mode, the DAC retains its characteristic softening of sibilance. The S's sound less sharp, with less bite, and presenting more as a gentle kind of shush or almost a hiss. So instead of a s, you get a kind of a shh sort of sound with it. And it's not amazing and it's not obtrusive, but you notice it's there. Now this characteristic is not so much a flaw as a deliberate tuning choice. The tube buffer introduces temporal smoothing and harmonic bloom, trading ultimate resolution for ease and musical flow. Cymbals have weight rather than shimmer, and leading edges are often more organic than etched. You know, long listening sessions are notably fatigue-free, even with less than ideal recordings. The bass performance on the DAC is solid, tuneful, though not especially super tight or ultra resolved. It favors texture over slam, aligning well with jazz, classical, vocal, and acoustic material. So where the Warmer works best, you know, given its topology and voicing, the Warmer is best suited for systems that benefit from added warmth and harmonic density. Tube or Class A/B amplifiers that kind of complement its relaxed treble, you know, balanced preamp, or integrated amps with good gain structure. Active speakers or line level inputs tolerant of a bit of a noise floor, just very slight. And music libraries leading more toward jazz, classical, you know, kind of singer, songwriter, and, you know, older or brighter recordings. Well, tube rolling's an obvious avenue for experimentation with this unit. I have on order, they haven't arrived yet, Electro-Harmonix 6922 EH tubes. They're Soviet built, and this should be fun. And I'll come back and give you an update on it. I expect some subtle changes rather than a total transformation. You know, fine-tuning is clearly part of the fun here, and tube rolling is available. And you'll see when we look inside how you can do it, and I'll show you how you take the tubes out and so forth and so on. I'm looking forward to the tube rolling. It just didn't arrive in time for this, and I don't know if I mentioned this before in the review. Everybody's been asking me. I teased this unit, I think, before Christmas. They had sent me a 220 volt unit, not a 120 volt unit. And so I just finally got the 110 in about 10 days or 2 weeks ago and had a listen to it. So that's kind of what happened to the review. So how does the Warmer compare to other DACs in this kind of price range, sub $400, you know, $300 to $400 price range? Well, the obvious comparison is the FiiO K13 R2R. That's a DAC headphone amp, and it sits close in price to the Warmer, and it shares some architectural DNA. I mean, notably, the fully differential 24-bit R2R ladder is the same. The K13 also has selectable NOS and OS modes, but really where the two diverge is in execution and intent. Well, the K13 is far more feature-rich and technically oriented. It offers Bluetooth. It has, you know, LDAC. It's got an onboard volume control, parametric EQ, integrated headphone amplifier that's quite good. Its solid-state output stage, modern FPGA clocking, and tighter control over the conversion process results in, obviously, better measurements and maybe audibly cleaner performance. Subjectively, the K13 sounds faster, maybe a bit more open and a bit more resolved than the Warmer. Transients are sharper, treble is a bit more extended without question, spatial cues are a little bit easier to discern, sibilance is more clearly defined, S-sounds have that bite and clarity rather than that kind of softened presentation that the Warmer gives you. So in comparison with the K13, the Warmer trades that precision for greater tonal density and mid-range richness. Even in oversampling mode, it never fully matches the K13's clarity or transient snap. Instead, it really maintains that smoother, much more forgiving character. So the K13, more neutral, more detailed, more technically precise, for sure. It's a great piece. The Warmer, it's warmer, fuller, more relaxed, and more musically forgiving. So the choice comes down to your priorities, resolution and flexibility versus tone and flow. So the Warmer, compare it to the SMSL D200. Now this is that ROM-based DAC, excuse me a second, that I like so much. I've given a very good review. The D200 represents a fundamentally different design philosophy from the FiiO Warmer. Obviously, rather than using an R2R ladder, the D200 is built around the ROM, and I think it's the BD34 352 EKV Delta Sigma DAC chip. You know, that is a chip known for very low noise architecture, excellent linearity, and a smooth yet highly resolving presentation compared to much more aggressive ESS-based design. You've heard me talk about digital glare. I really like the D200 as a Delta Sigma DAC. It's one of my favorites. Well, technically, the D200 prioritizes measured transparency with very low noise and distortion and wide dynamic range. It has excellent channel matching. Its implementation focuses on extracting the maximum performance from that ROM chipset, resulting in a DAC that is objectively cleaner and more precise than the Warmer. Well, subjectively, the D200 sounds clean, articulate, and well extended with superior retrieval of micro detail detail and a noticeably more open top end. Treble energy is more explicit. Transients are more sharply defined, and spatial cues are rendered with greater precision. Sibilance is much more accurately reproduced, for better or worse, making the D200 more revealing of recording quality and upstream components. The D200, by comparison, delivers a more truthful, unembellished view of the recording, where the Warmer trades that accuracy for, harmonic richness and long-term listening comfort, at least for me. The D200, clarity, resolution, neutrality, technical accuracy, without question. The Warmer, warm, smooth, tonal density, and a very analog style ease. The comparison highlights the core philosophical divide. The D200 aims to preserve information while the Warmer aims to shape the listening experience. Neither approach is inherently better, but they will appeal to very different listeners. So, in summary, kind of my final assessment, the FiiO WARMER R2R is not a DAC for those chasing ultimate clarity or measurement supremacy, and that's precisely what makes it compelling. It offers a rare combination of true R2R conversion with tube buffering, and it does it at a price that would have seemed impossible not that long ago. The sound is lush, smooth, and tonally generous, with mild softening of transients and upper frequency detail that prioritize musical flow over forensic analysis. In the context of its price, execution, and intent, I think the Warmer is a big success. Understanding its limitations. If you value emotional engagement, mid-range beauty, and relaxed long-term listening, the Warmer is very easy for me to recommend. If your priorities lean toward maximum resolution, air, technical precision, maybe you want to consider the K13 or the D200 or some other Delta Sigma type DAC in this price category. It might better suit your taste. Either way, FiiO deserves real credit. Hats off to them for bringing this kind of design and this kind of sound to a much broader audience at a really, really aggressive price point. Well, again, if you're interested in purchasing the FiiO Warmer, there will be an affiliate link to Apos Audio in the pinned comment and in the video description. What a cool product. I've had a ton of fun with this review, and hopefully you've had some fun with this review and you'd consider giving me a like and a subscription. I would greatly appreciate that. Maybe you'd like to ring the bell to get notified the next time I put out a video. If you have someone who who might get some benefit from this video, please consider sharing it with them. I would like to take a moment and say thank you to my current channel members and subscribers. Guys, your support is invaluable and I greatly appreciate it. As I said, there will be an affiliate link to Apos Audio in the pinned comment and in the video description. There's also a channel membership link in the pinned comment and in the video description. I didn't use any music in this review, but I would refer you to the Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 1 playlist. There will be a Tidal, Qobuz, and Spotify link in the video description for that. There are some additional affiliate links in that video description. Please comment. Let me know your thoughts. What are you thinking about? Are you looking for DACs with a different sound? And this has a definitely different sound. And again, as I mentioned, once I roll the tubes and I give them a chance to break in and listen to them, I'll do an update and tell you how that tube rolling went. But anyway, share with me your thoughts on this particular product. I've covered everything I wanted to on the FiiO WARMER R2R tube buffered ladder DAC. What a mouthful that is. Anyway, please like, subscribe, comment always. Follow me on Instagram if you want to. My name is Ed Holmwood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, and now it is your duty to yourself. Take some time today, put on the music you love, sit back, listen, and just enjoy yourself for a few minutes. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really hope you have a wonderful day.